Good day, everyone. Welcome to your pre-recorded video discussion for Science 10. So, for this morning, for this day, we will be discussing about the new topic in Science 10, which will be all about biodiversity and stability. So, for your learning targets for this morning, first, I can discuss the level of biological diversity. Second is I can explain the core principles and stability of the ecosystem. And the third one, I can differentiate the types of ecosystem stability. So what are these levels of biological diversity? So the wide variety of animals and plants on Earth are the wealth of humans. So these plants and animals around us, they provide us shelter, food, medicine, and clean air, of course. So when we say biodiversity, it is the sum of all the different species occupying a wide variety of ecosystem and the foundation of life on Earth. No? Also, biodiversity is defined as the totality, total overall of the genes, the species, and the ecosystem of a region in which there are traditional three levels of at which biological variety has been identified. So first level is your species diversity. So when we say species diversity, it refers to the different species within a region or community. So when we say no in a community or in an ecosystem, so the number of species there is varied, no, and that number of species, no, they possesses genetic variation itself and different na genetic distribution in a specific na region. So it is said that there are many species that live on land than in the sea, but it is because no, there are more species that has been identified in land, and there is lesser na mga studies pa so far sa mga living na species under the sea. That's why now, as of the record, mas daghan ang known living species on land than or in comparison to the living organisms or species in the sea. Second level is your genetic diversity. So when we say genetic diversity, it refers to the variation of genes within the species. Variation of genes within the species. So it covers distinct populations of the same species. Like for example, no, of the genetic diversity is the different varieties of fungi, wheat, and rice. So for example, in this photo on the left side of your screen, now this is a variety of fungi. So these are no different na mga fungi types, no. Kailahi-lahi sila og gene composition. No, they are all varied, but they are in the same species, which is fungi. The same group rather. The third one is your ecosystem diversity. So when we say ecosystem diversity, it refers to the different biomes. So these biomes are the world's major communities. The group of community, no, a community, no living space of a specific species or group of species, biomes, no, and are characterized by adaptations of organism in a particular environment. So what are these biomes? We have deserts, marine, tundras, grasslands, and tropical rainforests. We have tropical rainforest that is very familiar to us. We have temperate forest, no, boreal forest in near polar Arctic regions, desert, savanna, no, in the wild, the grasslands, the marine, the freshwater, and the tundra. So these are only few of the different biomes in the world. So with these different biomes, no, there is a specific na mga plants and animals that is well adapted living to that type of ecosystem. So different ecosystem, different biomes means different adaptations to the varied animals and plants. No? So next on the list is the core principles and the stability of the ecosystem. So the following core principles and stability of ecosystem are important guidelines, no, to each individual to protect the environment as one pursues a quality life. So we need, or these are important guidelines, no, for us to protect the environment to have a stable ecosystem. So first, of course, is the balance of nature. So our nature has its own laws and processes to sustain itself. And an ecosystem having this its own law, no, can support only a given number of individuals at a given time. So for example, there is an ecosystem or a pond where ang kaya lang sa saka pond is only 4 ka frogs. But what will happen if there is more than 4 frogs that will live on that pond? So obviously there will be imbalance in their ecosystem. So what will happen is that that ecosystem, no, that pond will not be able to support that number of individual, and therefore there will be a scarcity of resources to that frogs there living in the pond. Kahit tungod dili man kaya daan sa ecosystem to support um, numbers greater than 4 na mga individual. So there will be no balance in nature. So to promote this ecological balance of ecosystem, one way, no, to balance that is the processes of the nutrient cycles and biochemical cycles in that is happening in our environment or in our ecosystem. So an example of that biochemical and nutrient cycles are your nitrogen cycle, no, and your carbon dioxide, oxygen, and carbon dioxide na cycle. So they help in reusing, no, elements for the continuous cycle of nutrients, not just for the animals itself, but also for the plants and other living organism in the ecosystem. So that is one way to balance the nature, no? The different through the help of the different biological cycles in our environment. Second is the diversity and stability principle, huh? Stability and diversity. So all life forms are important in the ecosystem. There is no such thing, no, na walay pulos in an ecosystem. No matter how small or how big that organism are, they have their own specific role in the ecosystem. So the more diverse the ecosystem, the more na daghan kay mga species, dahil sila, the more resilient and stable it becomes. So why? It is because every species has its own way in making the ecosystem stable. No, mas daghan sila og lahi-lahi sila og way. So nila sila ilugay og space, wala sila ilugay og resources para mahimong stable ang ilahang ecosystem, ang ilahang living environment. So when a species is lost, it affects obviously the bond in the web of life. Now, it is said that life is like a spider web. No? Kung matarong ng isa ka kwan sa web, no, maapektuhan ang all of your overall na web. So when a species is lost, of course, no, it would affect the diversity and the stability in your ecosystem. Number 3 is the fitness of resources as one of the core principles. So most of the resources are non-renewable, such as the coal, fuel, fossil fuel, and the natural gas. So since these are non-renewables, so people, humans, or other organisms utilizing this type of resources should be prudent and um, wise in using such resources. Kay these type of resources are finite. No, naa na siya hangganan and we can abuse that one because one day, wala natin makuha na fossil fuel, wala natin makuha na coal, wala natin makuha na natural gas. The fourth one is stewardship. One of the one of the core principle, instability of your environment. So being the steward of your environment. Now, human beings are part of nature, so of course we have this responsibility to protect, to preserve, and conserve nature for the use of the present and future generations. Okay, what are those four um, core principles? We have stewardship, we have fitness of resources, we have, what's the other one? The diversity and stability, and the last one is the balance of nature. So the stability of ecosystems. So the stability of your ecosystem depends on the different biotic and abiotic factors that influence the capacity of the ecosystem to become stable. So when we say biotic factors, it is the living factors. The second, abiotic factors, it is the non-living factors in your ecosystem. So how is it being utilized in the stability of your ecosystem? So your abiotic factors nga are the living, non-living components, and it consists of the light, the water, and the temperature. So, so your biodiversity, no, should be maintained by protecting the ecosystem. It could be maintained by protecting the ecosystem. So in response to the stability of your ecosystem, no, so it should be that the size of consumer population must be controlled due to limited availability of materials and food resources. So ayun nga, like what I have example earlier about on sa frog, no? So there will be times that dili kaya sa environment, dili kaya sa ecosystem to support more than um, uh, number of species that is not um, counted to be cared by that ecosystem. So kung ang kaya lang sa ecosystem is 5 or 4, so dili na niya na dayo yung mga scarcity of resources if ang mapuyuan ang lugar is more than 5 or 4 because of the limited availability of materials and food resources nga. And also for your ecosystem to be stable, so there should be no overgrazing and overuse of resources. So overgrazing, for example, kanang sa mga cows in the meadows. So there are some times that in your grassland nga daghan kaayo og cow or other na grass eating na animal, so mahurot in one stance ang grass, no, so it's not that good, no, to um eat that in one time only kay murag dili na siya good in the on the side sa ato ang plant na um species, no, so there will be for the next nga eating na pud nila, so wala na sila makaunt kay nag-overgraze man ka. So dapat balance. So dili kung for example you have a lot of cow nga pakaunon or grass eating na animal, so imo siya ibutang in the different locations para dili ra dayon maano imuhang ecosystem of that grassland. Also, there should be no overuse of resources. So learn to be prudent and be wise in using your utilizing your resources. So there are some of the biotic and abiotic factors enhancing the growth of the animal and plants diversity. So these factors include favorable light. So plants tend to grow um, much bigger, much healthier if it gains or it is kana pabor in your perfect na posisyon nga na matugnan siya sa light. No? Next is also sufficient rainfall. So sufficient rainfall, dili kusog kaayo nga ulan, dili daghan nga ulan, dili pod very nihit nga ulan, but sufficient rainfall will greatly affect the growth of your animal and plant. Third one is the ability to secure food, especially for your animals. Fourth is the favorable temperature. Fifth is the ability to migrate to new territories. So it is very important for some animals to be able to migrate to new territories to find new food resources or even shelter for its new family. The sixth one is the ability to defend itself from predators. Number seven is the ability to reproduce healthy offspring. The eighth one is the ability to blend in to the environment so as not to be eaten. So being able to blend, to being able to hide from its predators, no, in its environment. And ninth is the ability to compete with others for food, shelter, and space, being able to defend himself, no, for to fight for space, food, and shelter. And the tenth one, no, factor is the ability of that species to adapt to a new habitat and fast changing condition of the environment. So the more adaptable the organism, no, the more that an organism is able to adapt to its new habitat and environment, the more percentage, the higher percentage it will survive its future generations. So we have types of ecosystem stability. So when we say this type of ecosystem stability, no, so it is not a static property, but a dynamic balance that characterizes two types. So we have these terms resistance and resilience as description for your ecosystem stability. So what's the terms resistance and resilience in reference to your ecosystem stability? So when we say resistance, ecosystem resistance, no, it measures how much an ecosystem resists change. So from the word itself, resistance, no, how an ecosystem resists change. So the ecosystem will remain a stable ecosystem despite disturbances or changes like depletion of oxygen in water or eutrophication. So if there is tawag ani, there is a eutrophication or there's a depletion of oxygen in water. So it depends on how the ecosystem's resistance will be able to resist that change in the um, oxygen level in its water. So if that ecosystem is stable enough, so it has enough ecosystem resistance. On the other hand, the concept of resilience. When we say resilience, no, it measures how quickly the ecosystem recovers from disturbance or resisting damage. So which means that it can immediately return to a steady state or a balanced ecosystem. So there will be times that your ecosystem will be disturbed, no? Obviously, ma-disturb yun na siya later or sooner, no, which means no, if there is an ecosystem stability or that resilience of your ecosystem, no, it will be able to bounce back, it will be able to get back to its original state, no, or a balanced ni ecosystem. So it is, on the other word, in other term, no, the capability of the ecosystem to respond to change. It's a positive response to change. Now, your resilience. So, what are those two types of ecosystem stability? The resilience and resistance. So that ends our lesson for this morning. So let me give you this Bible verse from Psalms 104 verse 24. So how many are your works, Lord? In wisdoms you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. So thank you for today, and I hope you have learned something out of this video discussion. So don't forget to answer your quiz at PH Online. Thank you and God bless.